Once upon a time in the Amazon, the most beautiful forest. Green forest, blue sky, the most immense forest. At the bottom of the Yara's waters are Cabloco legends and sorrows, and the river pulling the waters. What cuts in seconds takes time to avenge. What about the fruit for the people to eat? Then there's the bird, there's the nest, there's the air. Downstream has a stream, and this river is a sea. For those like myself who aren't so familiar with the beautiful Portuguese language, those were just a few moments from the song you heard playing, Saga de Amazonas by Vital Faires. It was a favorite song of Zé Cláudio Ribeiro da Silva, whom, alongside Maria de Espírito Santo and other environmental defenders of the Amazon, we honor today. Maria and Zé Cláudio were nut collectors and environmental defenders of Praialta Piraneira in the Brazilian Amazon, who were murdered as a consequence of their engagement protecting the forest from illegal logging and timber trafficking. We warmly welcome you all to this event in memory of them today. My name is Isabel Bordisch, and I am joining you from Uppsala in Sweden on behalf of Climate Change Leadership at Uppsala University. Climate Change Leadership is an interdisciplinary node for research and collaboration on societal responses to climate change. We are co-hosting today's event with Latinamerikagruperna, a Swedish solidarity organization that works with Latin American social movements, supporting their causes and creating knowledge exchange between Sweden and Latin America. A few short reminders as we begin. This event is happening in Portuguese with English interpretation. Please select your language of choice at the bottom of the Zoom window. And as a tip, if you mute the original language, you will have a clearer audio stream. Our intention This event is also being recorded, and by attending this webinar, you consent to the recording. Our intention with today's event is to remember and honor Maria and Zé Cláudio, to understand the continued struggle to defend the environment and human rights in the region of Praialta Piraneira, and to understand the roles of environmental defenders in the context of climate change and just transition. After introducing our speakers to you, we will move straight to our conversation with Stefania, Claudelice, and Felipe. You will then have the opportunity to ask questions in the Q&A, and for those who wish, we will open up a separate Zoom room after today's event to reflect together. As audience members, we ask you to actively listen, to contribute with your questions, and to reflect with us in the post-webinar Zoom room if you choose. So, without further ado, we are delighted to welcome the following speakers to today's webinar. Firstly, Stefania Barca, political ecologist and environmental historian, with current research interests spanning just transition, care, and decolonizing climate discourse. She is our current Zennström Professor in Climate Change Leadership at Uppsala University. Next, Bartira Fortes, anthropologist, artist, activist, and representative of Latinamerikagruperna. Both Stefania and Bartira will be moderating today's discussion. We are extremely honored to welcome Claudelice de Silva Santos as our main speaker for today. Zé Cláudio's sister, student of law, and frontline defender herself, Claudelice continues to oppose the human rights and land violations happening in the wake of land grabbing and logging in the Amazon. We are also delighted to welcome Felipe Milanez, Brazilian journalist and professor in political ecology at the Federal University of Bahia. Felipe lived and worked closely with Maria and Zé Cláudio before their murders, and his 2011 documentary film Toxic Amazon tells their story. We can highly recommend watching the full film, and the link is available on the page for today's event. But for now, here are a few short moments from the film.
A gente vou mostrar para vocês aqui o orgulho da minha floresta, que é a majestade. Se depender de mim, essa aqui vai ficar por muitos e muitos anos aqui. Em 97 foi criado no município de Nova Ipixuna o primeiro PAI, Projeto de Assentamento Extrativista, Praia Alta Piranheira. A gente tinha uma cobertura vegetal de 85% de floresta nativa. Hoje resta pouco mais de 20% dessa cobertura já fragmentada em muitos lugares. É um desastre para quem vive do extrativismo como eu, que sou castanheiro desde os 7 anos de idade, vivo da floresta, protejo ela de todo jeito. Por isso, eu vivo com a bala na cabeça a qualquer hora.
Seu Cláudio, como que é todo o teu nome?
Zé Cláudio Ribeiro da Silva.
Maria do Espírito Santo da Silva.
Porque eu vou para cima, eu denuncio os madeireiros, denuncio os carvoeiros. A mesma coisa que fizeram no Acre com Chico Mendes, querem fazer comigo. Eu posso estar hoje aqui conversando com vocês, daqui um mês vocês podem saber a notícia que eu desapareci.
Aí quando a gente chegou no local, estavam os dois jogados no chão, todo furado de bala, sem a orelha. É muito difícil lembrar.
Tinha uma poça de sangue nesse buraco aqui, eu acho que ainda foi visto aquela poça de sangue, e eles arrastaram o corpo dela até aqui.
Marabá é o epicentro do desmatamento da região amazônica. E aqui é a região que se chama do Arco do Desmatamento. E esse arco vai em direção ao centro da Amazônia. Onde você for nesse arco, você vai encontrar violência, você vai encontrar grileiros, você vai encontrar fazendeiros, madeireiros, tudo matando os pequenos agricultores, os ambientalistas, as pessoas que lutam por desenvolvimento dessa região com a preservação.
Quando tinha alguma derrubada, que eles escutavam a motosserra, eles iam lá ver o que estava acontecendo. O Zé Cláudio ia parar para perguntar, para conversar, e a Maria ficava na retaguarda com uma câmera fotográfica, e ela fazia as fotos para comprovar nas denúncias deles que as ilegalidades que estavam ocorrendo aqui.
A família toda tinha essa preocupação. O pai dele pediu muito. Ele disse, meu filho, saia de movimento, deixe essa luta. Isso vai terminar triste.
Eles são resultado de um modelo econômico, de um modelo de desenvolvimento em curso na Amazônia hoje, que infelizmente o seu resultado final é a violência, seja contra as pessoas, seja contra o meio ambiente.
Eu estou assumindo essa tribuna aqui para falar a respeito de uma tragédia que aconteceu hoje. Quero ler um trecho de uma entrevista feita por Felipe Milanez. Quando uma árvore dessas é cortada, a seiva lembra sangue, Zé Cláudio. Meu amigo, ela exala um cheiro quando está sendo cortada que você sente. Quando vai cair, aí você escuta o gemido dela. Você sente como um outro ser que morre? Sinto. Se um cara matou alguém, é porque é um ser vivo. Senhor presidente, eu estou fazendo um discurso aqui sério. Que história é essa, meus amigos? Então vamos respeitar pelo menos a memória desses heróis que foram assassinados.
Vaiada a morte do meu irmão e da minha cunhada, em plena votação do Código Florestal.
E saber que é um risco, isso aí eu não tenho dúvida. Dizer que não tenho medo, estou sendo hipócrita. Da luta, tudo, a primeira coisa importante é a ousadia. Ela é uma coisa que alimenta, para mim, é que alimenta a luta.
O senhor não tem medo?
Tem. Se eu disser que eu não tenho medo, eu estou mentindo. E a vida é muito boa, né, meu amigo? Mas eu tenho medo, mas no mesmo instante que eu tenho medo, além de eu ter minha obrigação como cidadão, o impulso que eu tenho quando eu vejo uma injustiça me tira o medo. Porque o homem é o que ele é. Então, se você tem coragem de lutar, lute. Porque mais antes você morrer tentando do que morrer omisso.
Thank you, Felipe, for sharing those moments from your film with us. I now pass the floor to Stefania to start today's conversation.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Isabel. And thank you, everybody who's present here today. It's a great honor to me, and I'm very happy to honor Maria and Zé Cláudio in this venue that we're sharing here. So I just wanted to open thanking everybody for sharing this memory with us. And especially I would like to thank Felipe and Claudelice for having accepted our invitation. It's a great honor. And I'm actually very touched to have this role today, to have this dialogue with you, and to talk about Maria and Zé Cláudio's story and all the struggle that they were leading, and they continue inspiring us 10 years after that. I got to know their story 1 year after they were murdered, and that was through this movie that we just watched a trailer of. This is a movie that Felipe presented at a cinema festival organized by the Center of Social Studies in Coimbra, Portugal, where I work. And this story is so powerful that it will never leave you the same after watching it. It has this huge potential of transforming whoever gets involved in it, to transform our perspective regarding reality and the planet's ecological crisis, and how can humanity have this non-human relations, and which are the powers that oppose to this. Now, to understand the legacy and the life of Maria and Zé Cláudio, you need to know what the non-human things that they were identifying, and also the environment that they identified with, to the point that they risked their lives to defend that. So you need to know a little bit about the Praia Alta Paianeira nut area, and the area in which they lived and that contributed to create, and the region of the south of Pará and all their struggles. Therefore, I would like to begin this conversation asking Felipe. He has been doing a lot of research in terms of political ecology, so that we can put everything within context in a brief way. So Felipe, please, could you explain a little bit for those who do not know, what is an agro-extractivist settlement, how it works, and also which are the elements that you can share with us that could help us to understand, to realize the place and the world in which the lives of Maria and Zé Cláudio were in context, especially in the Brazil nut trees. Thank you, Stefania. I would like to thank you for this invitation, and I thank Isabel and Laila and all the colleagues from Uppsala University that you should organize and express solidarity with this event, with what we're living in Brazil, and also the respect and the solidarity towards the memory of Zé Cláudio and Maria. There are no words in terms of how we have to face such a very difficult issue when it comes to climatic emergency without our borders. We share the expression of solidarity amongst ourselves, the humans, and that we can have this cross-section sharing in the whole world is very important when we're facing all these difficulties. And Brazil is facing a very difficult period. Yesterday, a very important defender, Maria Cava, was attacked, and they set fire to her house and to her mom, and these were illegal miners, and they were triggered by the Bolsonaro government, and this is a tragedy that touches all of us and creates a lot of pain and suffer. The Zumurukus are people that live next to the settlement of extractive settlements and express a lot of solidarity. These are the peoples of the forest, and they're being attacked. When I met Zé Cláudio and Maria, and I heard Vital Faria's song today, I remembered very sadly that Zé Cláudio had talked about if the forest had feet, it would not remain there, it would run away from the violence. And because the forest can't run away, they were protecting, Zé Cláudio and Maria were protecting it. And they said that the forest was an ally of theirs, so that they could live in freedom, so they shouldn't be slaves. And the forest would teach them. And this expression, teaching, is a beautiful expression. It's very significant because by teaching, you learn. And when you learn, you change. Maria, she was an educator. She studied at the university, the Federal University of Pará, and she used to teach the children within the settlement where she lived. And she commends the school because Maria knew that to teach the future generations, we need to remember the past. One of the things that I learned the most with this is the ideas of Zé Cláudio and Maria, but also the violence that we experience in Brazil today that would already existed then, the impunity violence. When I saw this trailer at the Brazilian Congress, they were actually booed when they heard about the murder. They booed it to deal with death as if it had no importance. And our president today, he has made jokes about the deaths of coronavirus and the tragedies. And when we face this contemporary fascism in Brazil, it's like life has lost its sense. We're dying every day. And this was already happening before. And the lies that led to impunity when the cases were taken to court, and the people who ordered their murder, José Enrico Moreira, is still free, and other two farmers who also participated in the murder, they're completely impune. And this sense of impunity creates a very huge level of ill ease in the countries and makes things very difficult. But this is not the suffering that we're going to have going forward. We want to keep their memory and their struggle. I lost 2 friends, but I got 2 friends, Alaise and Claudelice, and these will be my sisters for the rest of my life. And they always teach me every single day. On Maria's t-shirt she had, you know, when I took those pictures, we will only change the world when we change ourselves. And this event, the solidarity that you're expressing with us, I do hope that our message will help to change perspectives, and in this change of perspective, we might meet to be together. So now I would like to give the floor, and I would like to thank Claudelice for her presence, for fighting in such a one-pointed way after the murder, not only against injustice, but also through the Institute Zé Cláudio Maria, that she is a coordinator, and justice against all the other environmental issues in the forest. In this struggle, we're together with a lot of love, a lot of care. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good morning to everybody. I'm so grateful to be here in which we can share these moments of life, but also of challenges that Zé Cláudio and Maria had to address. I'm very sorry. I get very, very touched when I heard them on the trailer, even 10 years after what happened. It's not easy, because I immediately get the memory of the moments in which we struggled together, but also the moments that we spent in family, and when we dreamt about a beautiful future, a wonderful future, but it was brutally removed from our lives. Zé Cláudio and Maria, as you could see at the video, they were very simple, humble people. They were farmers. They lived by gathering the fruits in the forest, and they believed very strongly that that was our roadmap to the future. We need to have a balanced environment. We need the forest. We need to respect the way in which the forest needs to be respected. And in these 10 years, we have put in so many efforts so that their memories and their legacies from him and from her will fall into forgetfulness, because the main goal of the murderers and their interest of the murdering of the defenders of human rights and the environment is to kill the body, to kill the history, and to silence whoever is still alive. And we will not allow that to happen. We're very, very afraid in the beginning, because of course there were other people who were also being threatened. So we needed to, at the same time that we had to deal with our grief, we also had to work so that the people who were being threatened should continue being alive. So in these 10 years, we have been fighting for justice that we still haven't had up to date, and also so the other defenders, like Zé Cláudio and Maria, should continue alive and continue fighting for their causes, and that they should conquer their violated rights for their land, for their territory, for the water. It doesn't matter what the struggle is, for their dignity. We deserve those rights. We have those rights, and we need to fight for them. And we do not need more martyrs. Zé Cláudio and Maria, they learned through this whole process, fighting for their land together with the social movement, very inspired by Chico Mendes' struggle. And they learned that what we have, what we bring from our ancestors to respect the forest, this is something that can be shared with the world and with other people that perhaps are not aware of that, or they don't have that perspective on the importance of the balance of Mother Earth for us. for our future, for the future generations, Zé Cláudio and Maria, they lived according to what they said. They lived from the forest, from agriculture, and they were directly involved in the social organization of their areas. So everything they conquered, all their realizations that they got with other of their colleagues at the settlement was to bring a development to that area, but that development shouldn't remove the integrity of the environment and the people who were living according to their traditions in those areas. And when in the beginning, they managed to get this land and they managed to document their plots, that's when the threats began, because the Brazilian state has never concluded all the work and all the activities that the state is responsible for at that place. So that is when the reconcentration of public land started to be taken over by illegal farmers and a lot of illegal logging and all of this. They used to report, they would photograph, they would report together with the Office of Pastoral Land. And the model of preservation, the state doesn't control it. It doesn't inspect it. They are charcoal producers, they're slave work, they're destroying the forest, they're concentrated public lands. This can't happen. So they started being very threatened by that. And the farmers, to get the land back from the land grabbers, they would set fire to the farmer's house. And Carlos and Maria, they would report that there were people who had their houses burnt down by the farmers. So these people who only wanted to destroy the forest and the public land just for cattle ranching, they started organizing Zé Cláudio and Maria's murder. And in 2011, they finally managed what they really wanted should happen, to silence Zé Carlos and Maria. Previously, when they were working to get their murder, they were reported. And when the exploitation of logging was reported in 2003, Zé Cláudio actually was blacklisted as one of the people who was threatened by CQP, and then Maria was put in the list, and they only were removed from the list in 2011. The government knew that they were threatened, their life was threatened, and they never investigated. They never did the state take any kind of measure to minimize the conflict in that area, in the Praia do Pirapira. IBAMA never inspected what had been reported regarding illegal logging, and INCA never did anything to regularize the conflict areas. And from then onwards, we've been struggling and fighting so that Zé Cláudio and Maria's legacy should be an example, both for us, so that we can resist and have the courage to continue with our fight, but also to demand from the state, one-pointedly, for the life of the defenders of climate and human rights. So we got together with other defenders from other defenders to solidarity networks, so that we can expose all our struggles for human rights and the environment, so that other defenders that are in the same situation that Zé Cláudio and Maria were, that they should have support, that the eyes of the world should be on their conflicts, because these conflicts, these struggles, of course they can be solved, they can be minimized. It's just a matter of goodwill from the state, and that the world should put pressure on them, because once our forest is completely destroyed, we will also be destroyed. And that's why we should be united. We should look at Zé and Maria's stories, and also to pay attention to the defenders who are still alive, and like Maria Leusa, that her house was burnt down yesterday. And Erasmo, who had to leave his land so that he wouldn't be killed, together with his pregnant wife. And so many other defenders that today are in their land, but they have no freedom to move around because they know that they will be killed. Just like it happened with Chico Mendes, Zé and Maria, and so many other defenders. Right now, the Brazilian state is going through such a difficult moment that even after the massacre in Pau d'Arco that took place 4 years ago, in which 9 men workers and 1 woman were massacred, were murdered, one of the survivors was murdered this year, and he already knew he was going to be killed. He reported the way in which his colleagues were tortured and murdered. And he also reported the fact that he was under death threat, but the state never did absolutely anything to keep him alive. So that's what my country is like right now. We're completely in the hands of those forces, and the state that should protect us is a state that leaves us alone and that lets us be killed. And that's why it's so important to have these moments to reflect for the people who are on the other side of the world. And they perhaps have never been here, but now you know, we are being murdered. We're reporting these situations, and at the same time that we report them and we struggle for us in my biome, we are also being massacred. Zé Cláudio and Maria taught us that courage in the struggle, and we should never give up, and we should report and we should resist. And that's exactly what we're doing. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to remember how strong Zé Cláudio and Maria were, and how strong that we need to be as well. Thank you, Claudelice, for what you said. I'm sure it's not very easy for you to talk about these murders the way you did, and this massacre, and then how we can keep them alive in the world's consciousness and continue fighting for justice. So I would like to thank as well the fact that you have told us about the fights that all these farmers and extractivists and everybody is doing to defend the forest and to defend themselves. And I don't know if you would like to add anything else, Claudelice, regarding if you would like to talk a little bit more about your own involvement in this struggle. And what's your, so to say, I mean, how you have been impacted in these past 10 years in this struggle, and the legacy of Maria and Zé Cláudio. And I don't know, maybe you would like to talk a little bit more about what's happening today, more recently in terms of the pandemic and the forest fires, and the news that we get from the Amazon are these, right? Perhaps we're not getting a lot of information regarding people that have been, whose life has been threatened, but the news that we get are about the forest fires and the problem of the pandemic. And I don't know if you would like to tell us what your opinion is regarding what's happening right now. Thank you, my dear. So ever since Zé and Maria were murdered, of course, in the beginning, we just felt that unbearable pain and the feeling that we didn't know what to do. But after a while, we said, no, we cannot give them what they want. You know, the ones who murdered them. We won't give them what they want because they want our silence. We're going to continue with our fight and our struggle that Maria and Claudio started. So after that, I started studying law. I'm going to be graduating to this year. And the main goal of studying law is that other than understanding more deeply what happened to Zé Cláudio and Maria and what's happening in my region regarding violence, is also to be able to cooperate with other defenders that are alive, and they need that kind of support. We're aware of the fact that impunity here in Brazil is almost like what makes a wheel turn regarding the violence that takes place. It's impunity that guarantees that other defenders continue being murdered and that the continent is violated. There is no exemplary sanctions for those who destroy nature and who murder the defenders of the environment. And the result of this impunity are the massacres, the murders, and the continuity of the exploration of the environment. And when the news comes that there were these huge fires in these past years, and that the smoke from the illegal burnings in Pará, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it got dark in São Paulo due to the density of the smoke from the burnings. And the year after that, in the Pantanal, which is a biome that needs to be preserved as it is, and also the Cerrado biome and the Amazon biome, all these environmental delinquents, they still continue being impuned. And this state is doing exactly the opposite of what our environmental legislation states. And the Minister of Environment, he changed his cabinet in our state, the state of Pará. And as a result of that is what happened yesterday to Maria Leusa and the Muduruku peoples in the Tapajós area. So impunity guarantees that these people, these delinquents, continue being impugned, that they have more and more export products that are illegal, like the wood and the meat, illegal meat, illegal wood that goes to the UK, to Europe, to the US. This happens every day in areas where people are being murdered in those areas. So the impunity of these people is what guarantees the perpetuity of violence against us human beings, but also against the forest and the rivers. It's unacceptable that we're living in the 21st century with all the research regarding climate change, and Brazil still continues on this absurd scale of violence, both against us as against the environment. So sometimes we feel like a people that we have to struggle and fight for us, for our lives, and for our future generations and for the environment, whereas the state that should be working side to side with us, they are the ones who kill us. They are the ones that guarantee the impunity of the environmental delinquents. Thank you again, Claudelice. It was very important to hear all this from somebody who has been impacted directly, but somebody who's mobilized both inside and outside of Brazil. And I believe that this is the way I wanted to conclude this conversation, you know, talking a little bit about that, that we could talk to Felipe regarding this issue of violence. I know, Felipe, that you have been monitoring all these different phases of the process against the gunmen and the ones who ordered the assassinations. So could you share your analysis regarding impunity, this issue that Claudelice was mentioning, which is actually core, you know, impunity when it comes to environmental criminality. It's an impunity against human rights, against people. It's impunity of, you know, people who have murdered indigenous people and farmers. And in what way is this related to the social and economic policies in the Amazon region? So what's your analysis? What is your point of view as you are a specialist in political ecology? You know, the analysis of this link between impunity and public policies, and especially economic policies, as well as what are the responsibilities? What's the international accountability, so to say, when it comes to all of this? And especially the international accountability regarding the expansion of agribusiness and the extractive activities in the Amazon. Thank you for your question. It's very touching to hear Claudelice and the strengths with which she expresses her defense of the environment. And it's really sad to see what's happening here in Brazil. Also regarding the cruelty with which people react towards the defenders. Impunity is selective, it's not general. Brazil does have a judiciary system that's very efficient, but only to guarantee privileges and interests. Brazil is a very racist country in which racism organizes how justice is carried out. So it works very well in terms of maintaining the privilege. A few weeks ago, the police in Rio murdered 29 Afro-Brazilians in the favela areas without they're going through judicial proceedings. And they said they were not, the police was not going to be investigated. They were authorized to kill. And what Claudelice had told us of 10 murders in a farm of people who farm the land in the south of Pará, they have arbitrary arresting of the lawyer who defends them by the police, and all the policemen who murdered are still free. It's an impunity that's part of the system. How come Claudelice's brother lived 7 or 8 years in a list of people whose life were threatened? And this list is also to intimidate the people, to bring them down. If you don't behave, you're going to be murdered. That's what it meant. And in some cases, they would send the police to protect them. But it was the same police that is also working for the farmers in the region. So of course, they could not accept that. So this system of impunity and violence in Brazil is directly linked to the control of natural resources and to the export of these natural resources. How can you have justice if you export soybeans from the Amazon, or iron, which is what happens in Pará? And Vale, the mining company, has a historic role of producing violence in Pará and other areas. Zé Cláudio and Maria were talking about illegal charcoal that was produced in the settlement, that was used for the Vale complex as pig iron, and that was exported to Europe, to the US especially, and they would export iron. And these exports are blood exports. There is no wood of Brazil in Europe today that's not linked to violence. Actually, even the Minister of Environment has been investigated and reported to the federal police to allow wood that has been illegally logged. And this is where the indigenous people live, like the Purubi in Rundumbel, which is a company close to Santarém. And this trade that links us also separates us internationally. What's happening in Brazil is not only a Brazilian problem. maybe it's a responsibility of the Brazilians because they voted on Bolsonaro, but everybody suffers. The whole world is impacted by the destruction of the Amazon and the destruction of the Cerrado and other biomes. And the whole world, the whole of humanity is losing with the genocide and the murders. If an indigenous people is being undergoing genocide like happening today, then the whole world is losing from it. The whole of humanity will feel it. This is not, I mean, it's not, it's a library of the forest, like the Urunku saying, and their ancient people die. And this is a grief that we should all share. And at the same time that this violence is happening, Brazil announces a new corridor for exporting soybean through Chile from Mato Grosso do Sul. Peru, the Congress in Peru, Fujimorista, has approved the construction of a highway that's going to unite Cruzeiro do Sul, Apucalpa, Acre to Peru, another route for exporting the natural resources of the Amazon region. These resources will carry with them a hidden way of this whole network of violence that's being reported. It's extremely important that there should be international lobbying against what Brazilian government is doing, that they're not respecting fundamental international law for the environment and human rights, and that we together can create alternatives that will move us forward, that will take us away from this tragic environment in which we see our neighbor being murdered and other human beings that are suffering. And I've been trying to learn from the peoples in the forest. In this case that Claudelice reported, they're not suffering because of the reaction. Like Maria Leos and Alessandra from the Urucu, the women that work with extractive action. They have a group called Jetai, with a group of extractivist women that produce in a sustainable way. They extracting essences from the forest. They're acting. So why don't we get together and unite with these kind of forms of production and sharing, and that instead of using these tragic and economical development forms of the forest, I think we have a lot to share, and we need to have more exchange of knowledge, know-how, and products, but from a different perspective and in a different way. International pressure and lobbying right now is basic so that in Brazil we may survive. Thank you so much, Felipe and Claudelice, for your contributions and for these elements that you have brought to our dialogue in our remembrance of Maria Cláudia, Zé Cláudio and Maria. And before we open for the debate, I wonder if you have any questions. Please, can you put your questions in the Q&A? You can write in Portuguese or in English. And we'll have some people who are going to be gathering your thoughts and comments or questions. So now I would like to show you a short video that was shot in the UN award to Zé Cláudio and Maria as forest heroes. I think Isabella is ready to share. Thank you, Isa.
On February 9th, 2012, José Cláudio Ribeiro and Maria do Espírito Santo were posthumously recognized as forest heroes by the United Nations Forum on Forest Secretariat for their work fighting illegal logging in the Amazon forest. They were tragically murdered in May 2011 following death threats they received for their activism.
Essa é a majestade, o orgulho da floresta. Se depender de mim, essa aqui vai ficar por muitos e muitos anos aqui. Mesmo que ela venha a morrer, alguma coisa acontecer com ela, mas esse tronco dela vai ficar aqui. Aqui é onde eu fico sentado, aqui é onde eu venho meditar, recostar aqui e pensar como é que é linda a natureza.
Já virou utopia mesmo, mas aqui no meu lote podemos mostrar para a sociedade que é possível se viver com os recursos da floresta de maneira sustentável.
Que sou castanheiro desde os 7 anos de idade, vivo da floresta, protejo ela de todo jeito.
Eu sei que Mexe e Vira, em 97, criamos o projeto de assentamento e criamos uma associação aqui dentro e me botaram como presidente dessa associação. Foi o tempo também, começou a vir as indústrias madeireiras e aí começou o ataque à floresta e aí começou o meu embate com eles e aí começou a perseguição, aí começou o nego querer meu pescoço.
A luta não é muito fácil não, porque o ecologista, o ambientalista é visto como pessoa do atraso, né? Isso é que dificulta a relação. Da luta tudo, a primeira coisa importante é a ousadia. Ela é uma coisa que alimenta, para mim, é que alimenta a luta.
Tem uma briga muito desigual entre nós ambientalistas e o poder aquisitivo do dinheiro. Porque nós brigamos em tudo. E o cara chega, impõe o dinheiro em cima da miséria do cara que está lá e aí vai conseguindo aliciar o cara e detonar a floresta. Para toda a natureza sou eu que vivo aqui no meio delas e não pretendo vendê-lo.
Sou Laísa Santos Sampaio, irmã de Maria do Espírito Santo e cunhada de Zé Cláudio, que foram homenageados ontem com o prêmio Heróis da Floresta. Um prêmio super importante como reconhecimento da luta que os dois tiveram na Amazônia e para nós que continuamos na mesma luta por uma Amazônia melhor, em busca de socorro. Maria e José Cláudio não só defendiam a floresta, mas mostraram na prática como viver dignamente da floresta, respeitando a dinâmica e todas as espécies nela existentes. E sobre essa vida na floresta, eles deram exemplos, como na educação, ensinando as crianças de que pode ganhar mais com a floresta do que vendendo ou queimando ela.
Muito bem, eu vou passar então agora a palavra para
Very good.
Bartira
Now I would like to give the floor to Bartira.
para moderar a
And she's going to
sessão
be
de...
moderating the session, the debate session. Thank you, thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Very well. Anyway, I would like to thank you for this wonderful event in honor of Maria and Zé Cláudio. Thank you for everybody being here in this memorial. I'm going to be moderating the questions for Claudelice and Felipe. To begin with, I would like to read a message from Rodrigo a message that Rodrigo sent to Claudia. You're a warrior. You're such a great an inspiration for us from Fundo Casa. A lot of strengths, Claudelice. So let's start with the first question for Claudelice. How do you see these coming years right now? What are your expectations? What do you expect for the future? Well, thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, I have no hope that in the coming years we will have any level of peace. Unfortunately, what we are seeing and experiencing directly is an upsurge of violence and the flexibilization of the legal aspects that protect human rights and the environment. So there is going to be resistance. We are resisting and we will continue doing so. And we know that the result of this will always be conflicts because we will demand that these rights should not be made flexible. That means that they should be respected, that nature will be respected. And in that's how we see that violence is going to increase as it has been doing. And what we hope is that with all this international pressure and lobbying and the reports at international courts, we should anyway minimize the impact, but we're actually ready for to face some years that will not be easy. Bartira, your sound is not on. Oh, I'm so sorry. There's a question here that's quite similar, but perhaps you could focus a little bit more on the issue of the Amazon post-Bolsonaro, that is after Bolsonaro. What would be a political analysis based on this government and, after Bolsonaro government took office or after Bolsonaro's government will end? Well, the scars that this government is leaving in the environment and in the forest, as well as regarding human rights and the rights of the communities and traditional peoples, they're going to leave scars that will take a long, long time to remove and to restructure, to compose. So both when it comes to the biological aspect and the rights, but also the political aspects, there is a huge amount of unscrupulous politicians that have the power right now, and they're doing all kinds of things to move backwards and to remove a lot of the rights that we have managed to get in the course of history. So after Bolsonaro, after he's been removed, and we're fighting for that to happen, we will need to reconstruct. And to remove Bolsonaro will not be enough. We need to remove all these corrupt politicians that are in power right now and try to create a new political mindset, especially the party politics, so that we can have a little bit more peace and that we are able to restructure in a more conscious way with more rights. I'd like to ask a question to Felipe. Felipe, you concluded your talk talking about the international issue. You talk about Europe, the US. So the question is regarding that. In what way raising awareness in the world and have the attention of the public has been working in the past and now, and how do you see that going forward? The role of the international community. It's extremely important for what we're experiencing in Brazil. Also positively speaking, but also negatively speaking, because Bolsonaro didn't get the power only voted by the Brazilians. There had been a lot of financing international financing for his campaign. And Bolsonaro is not alone. There's a Congress, and most of the people in the Congress follows Bolsonaro. In these past week, the whole country is watching the investigation of the criminality due to the pandemic. It's a virus. It was used as a weapon to kill, that killed almost 500,000 people in Brazil. And while we're watching this parliamentary investigation committee, the Congress has increased the removal of fundamental rights. The Congress is not just one person. There are many representatives that are being paid to comply with international interests. So there has been a change in the environmental licensing so that any investment that has to do with natural resources in Brazil is compromised. There's no way you're going to invest in a hydroelectric plant in Brazil with international money without any guarantees that it's going to comply with the minimum of environmental protection on an international level, or for the International Labor Organization, that the communities will be heard. There is something called like a tractor that's going through Congress, and it's leading the interests of international cooperation. The Swiss banks that are not at all concerned with investment in Brazil, they don't care. They don't do what they do in Europe. How come the investments in Brazil has a different legislation compared to Europe? And the same thing with the Scandinavian cellulose and paper companies that have a specific legislation for Sweden and Norway, yet in Brazil, they accept that you plant eucalyptus in the Atlantic forest. So, you know, we have to have a sharing of rights. If the European legislation is so important to defend the ecology and the societies in Europe, the European countries should demand the same thing for their companies in other places. So Volkswagen, for example, has been supporting Bolsonaro government, as well as many banks, through the Bradesco plans, through investment funds from Harvard University, are purchasing land in Brazil, and they support members of Congress to change our legislation. So to what Claudelice was saying, so those who live in the forest cannot document their land, but huge landowners are able to get their documentation. So Brazil is now being attacked internationally, and Bolsonaro is supporting them. Because Bolsonaro is letting the Brazilian sovereignty be ignored. The Brazilian people is not involved in the new mining legislation and what's happening to Petrobras. So if this international attack, if there's an international attack, then the resistance should be also international, because alone we can't do anything. The same thing happens in Peru and Colombia. The solidarity with Brazil needs to be expressed with the Colombia, and that's being attacked, financed by the same great important international criminals. Bolsonaro is a gunman. He's a militia person that serves international interests. That's why, and why not say that he's a genocide? Many in the Brazilian elite ignore the fact that so many people are being murdered, but the international community should not do that, should not finance. International solidarity is very important. Without it, there's no way that we can respond. And this solidarity should be done putting pressure on the international cooperation and the European, and also the EU should act to change the legislation in Brazil. You cannot approve an agreement between Mercosur and the European Union with what's happening in Brazil. It's absurd. We will not express our solidarity through this trade agreement. There are other channels in which we can express our solidarity. This trade agreement should not be allowed, for example. Very good, Felipe. Thank you for your response. And I have a question here from Laila. It's a very long question in English. I'll try to translate it. I have been working with the leadership and human rights, and I would like to ask a question. The defenders of human rights and the environment in Brazil are facing repression to the civic space where the government tried to repress activism. The situation of the coronavirus has made everything worse because it has given a very practical coverage, so to say, to the government to put even more pressure on the civic space. How the defenders navigating in more harder contexts in which they put themselves at risk and they're more violent, main qualities of human rights and of environmental leaders that need to encourage and promote in these very challenging times in Brazil and in other places. So what are the qualities, these core qualities to encourage and promote in these very challenging times, the struggle for human rights and environmental rights? And they do not say, oh, okay, this question was made by Eric Code, and Laila shared it with me. Thank you, Laila. So this question is not directed to anybody specific, if it's for Felipe or Claudelice, so it's open and you can decide who can answer. Felipe can add on to what I'm going to say, but right now in Brazil, unfortunately, we've come to a point in which we're not afraid of the pandemic anymore. We need to go to the front, even though we know that we can die because of a bullet, the police, or whatever, or by the virus. But we've come to a point in which we're not afraid anymore of dying in silence at home, because we're also being killed at home. So I think the qualities are the ones that Maria was already teaching us, to have courage in our struggle. We shouldn't just sit quietly waiting for the tractor or the cattle or the bullet affect us. Ever since last year, what has been helping us has been the networks, the physical networks for protection and care, but also the virtual networks. So we're not having body-to-body, face-to-face struggle, but we're also showing people who are not even aware that this is happening, like on the social media, the virtual networks, and also the physical networks for reporting, for protection, many different fronts. And of course, we had to, just go into it and leave our fear behind, even the fear against the virus, because we can't sit at home being afraid of the virus while the gunmen are attacking our colleagues and the environment. We can't do that, definitely. And as of the end of last year and now, this fear has decreased more and more. On the 29th, the whole country has a mobilization to go out in the street. Put to mask, protect your face, use gel, but we have to go out into the streets. We can't sit at home and wait to be murdered by the virus or by the state. Felipe, would you like to add anything, says Bartira? This region in which Cláudio and Zé Cláudio and Maria live, it's a very violent area, not least since the dictatorship, but even from the beginning of the Paranat gathering. It's an area of a lot of conflict. It's a Araguaia guerrilla region. It's a region in which trade unionism was reinvented in Brazil, and the social movements are very powerful. When I began working in this area, and I came from the south of Brazil, And in the beginning, it's because I wanted to understand violence and I wanted to report it. But after so many tragedies, I learned, just like Claudia said, it's a region where you get a lot of inspiration. It's a very bubbly area in terms of creativity, the strength that Claudelice expresses, the power of Zé Cláudio Maria Laísa and the memory of the guerrilla in the Araguaia and the landless movement that were massacred in '96, and they continue resisting. They're building memories, and this memory of their struggle is an inspiration for us to act. And they're very close to death all the time, permanently. I have never seen a place in which life is so highly valued, and the courage that they have. Zé Cláudio and Maria expressed that with a lot of calm, with such a relaxed way that makes us wonder that, because we know that life is short and we have to live our life and we have to live it struggling and fighting, and other people will come after us and they will continue in our fights. Our responsibility right now vis-a-vis the future is to react. And this Saturday, like Claudelice said, there's a call for the social movement. It's a whole world gathered. Very good, says Bartira. Now we have another question from Bárbara Magalhães. And she says, thank you, Felipe and Claudelice, for sharing with us your story, your struggle, and the story of Maria and Zé Cláudio. My question is, how can we who live in Sweden can support your work? Well, this is something that people always ask us. And we say, oh my God, what should we say? I mean, because the distance, and all these things, and the needs, which are huge. So after the murder of Zé Cláudio and Maria, and they were already involved in this important work, both locally and for the environment. And we have been organized to keep this lively. So we have actually created the Institute of Zé Cláudio and Maria. This is an organization that has been named to honor them. And we have 3 fronts of action to begin with: to support and give emergency support to the defenders that whose life has been threatened. So unfortunately, we have a list of defenders that have been threatened, and we have received that list, and we have a protocol for that kind of support. And we consider, what is it that defenders want? Some of them are so afraid that they want to leave and then go back. Some want to install cameras or movement sensors to detect if somebody's coming at night to ambush them. Well, or some kind of communication. There's some very isolated communities that have no communication, so they can have a sun, a solar system or internet. And also to support women's group more than anything that work in the defense and protection of their land and the forest. So we have the Jetai group, which is in my community, but we also support other communities that have this perspective to preserve the forest, but also to work in a collective way. And there's a third front, which is advocacy, to support more the juridical, the legal aspect. So sometimes we can't give them direct support, but we help them to pay for the lawyers. And these lawyers are lawyers that understand the cause, and they're in favor of human rights, because we know that there are professional lawyers who do not want to be active in that area. So our lawyers are the ones that are very, very aware of the causes, so that they can monitor the cases of the defenders that are part of our network. For example, now we have a defender in the Trans-Amazonic region in which a logger came. He actually went with his van 4 times over her daughter. So we need to have medical support, because the little girl has one of her veins have been pressured in her head, and she needs to be transported from the area in which she lives to another city, which is a bigger city, so she can have medical care. So get in touch with us if you want to support us directly. I mean, the defenders, we can tell you which are the defenders we're monitoring and how you can help. Or you can get in touch with the organizations that work in a network with us, because right now we do not have a contact point, or we don't have a bank account where you have many different accounts, CETEPE or the Pastoral Land Office or some others. So in the next few weeks, we will have another account that you can help us with. So this work is done, pairing. For example, if you're a physician, how can you help? If you're a psychologist, how can we direct you to help us? So it's not only a matter of financial resources. If you know how to do translations, if you want to help us with any documents in this international network, because our team did not really have so many translators. So I'm saying that both resources, financial resources, but also your work, just get in touch with us. And for sure, we're going to be very grateful for everything. And for sure, there's somebody who will need the help that you can contribute with. Thank you so much, Claudelice. Please count with me and with us. I also live in Sweden. And we have a group of Brazilians that are part of the Latin America group, focused on Brazil. So we're always available to help you. So we'll create more contacts as a result of this meeting. We only have time for one more question, unfortunately. So we'll ask Juliana's question. What do you think regarding university research in this context, and also partnership between the academic world and the civil society, like the NGOs and the media perhaps as well? So what is your opinion regarding this kind of partnership between academia, the academic production, and civil society? Well, very briefly, the academia is a very important world, because that's where we circulate ideas, we produce ideas, but the academia needs to be decolonized. It shouldn't be the traditional old-fashioned academia in which one is going to work on top of the other one, but that we should work together, and in this way can really contribute. Claudelice is a member of the academia. She's a law student, and I hope that she can do her master's here in Bahia. We're really looking forward to that. So scholarships, working in partnership, we have a lot of partnership projects. There are many universities in Europe that's supporting research, joint research, and supporting indigenous peoples and extractive research in Brazil. 10 years ago, there were huge changes in the universities, especially when it comes to quotas. So a lot of Black and indigenous people, groups that had been historically marginalized, and extractivists as well. And these people do not have scholarships from the federal government, but internationally, maybe we can support them so that they continue with their studies. And the exchange of knowledge can always be shared. We can share knowledge about this oppressive system in Brazil through the media, through foundations, organization, de-hierarchize the university. The university have an extraordinary role. We cannot learn alone. We only learn collectively, and we need to distribute the resources. And the extractives group in Jetai, they're not only gatherers in the forest, they know the forest. They have ancestral knowledge, like Claudelice said. So we can get them involved in the research, and we can research together with the university. And this is not only positive to help the other, this is the only role of the university. The universities in Brazil are amongst the most important ones in the world, because they opened up. previously they were decadent. The university where I work in Bahia today, it's such a beautiful and diversified university. It wasn't like that 20 years ago. It started getting more and more knowledge with the participation of quilombolas, indigenous and Black people. It's within the university and the difference that you learn. And the universities are basic, where you can imagine a place where you have shared production of knowledge. And it could be a place in which we can get much closer than through trade agreements. The internationalization of the universities in Brazil is basic, and also in Europe. And this internationalization happens through a decolonization roadmap with a shared production. So this is a basic solution. I would like to add something. I couldn't express it better than Felipe. I agree with everything, that the role of the academia in this phase, in this historic period, to decolonize, and not least from the academia in Europe, which is my area. It's a matter of to show how we produce knowledge to the rest of the world, to decentralize the Western knowledge, and to open space for other kinds of knowledge and other experiences and world experience, so that they can come up and they can express themselves, so that we can express what's happening. And what we did today here is just a very short contribution to this kind of roadmap to learn from the people who are directly struggling for preservation. Because here in the North, we have an idea of preservation that's more colonial, which is colonial legacy. So we need to learn. Well, thank you very much. And we would like to close all the questions here. And there was a final question from Marco, but I think you answered it very clearly regarding the alliances and cooperation between Brazilian institutions and others, such as law and juridical institution, the media, the church. If you would like to use these venues for your final considerations. Clau, please. I'm so happy, because normally in our everyday struggle, sometimes I get very tired and I wonder if people are listening to what we're saying, and that we are denouncing is actually getting to the right people. And in these venues with these very important issues and questions that help us to reflect and to talk a little bit more, this is very inspiring, and it creates a better state of spirit that we are actually doing what we need. And this is very important. So I'm just so grateful for the people who asked the question, to the university and Felipe and everybody for this opportunity. And it's extremely important that we should be united as organizations and also as people. As of 2017, when Felipe was bridging what I was saying and some people in the UK, natural law, we have been doing incredible joint work, international conferences, research, and even more academic research, but also on the grassroots level where we're doing our research. And this has a result and a very powerful effect on the grassroots level, that the communities feel that they're part of it, and defenders feel that they're being seen, and they understand that they're not alone, that they can count on people who are maybe on the other side of the world, but they understand what's happening here, they get touched by it, and they're concerned with what's happening. And opportunities like this may make you very, very happy. We need to continue on our journey. Natalia, she just sent me a message. Thank you very much for following what we're doing. She's from a colleague of Erasmus Farnapu, and I earlier said that she had to leave that area to continue alive. She just gave birth. And I'm so happy for you, Natalia, that you're here, that you're alive. You and Erasmus are in our struggle, and you're not alone. You're here with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Claude. I would like to thank everybody again, everybody for this opportunity. Considering everything that we're experiencing, I'm still very optimistic and very inspiring. I think we're going to go through two very difficult years, and it's a crisis of voluntarism. Trump already lost, he already left. Bolsonaro is facing lots of difficulties, and he has been promoting more violence, and that's why we have had these attacks. And I think that by the end of our elections and sometime afterwards, we're going through a lot of tension, and we have to make sure that we shouldn't lose any lives. And we should express our solidarity because it's a dangerous moment. And in the future, the reconstruction will be a very beautiful process. And I'm convinced about that. Just like Claudelice said, there's so many networks, there are many artists in Brazil, indigenous artists and popular artists that are already creating and indicating other expressions of life. And this process will not disappear because it's very creative. And these expressions, please look into Denilson Manil's work and so many indigenous artists and the Institute Zé Cláudio and Maria, this network that Claudia mentioned, of popular artists together with defenders. And this future at the moment is in arts. And the arts in Brazil are going through an incredible period, very beautiful art that's popping up. And I believe that this artistic expression is going to radiate to create a different situation for the population. Fascism has brought a lot of deaths in Brazil and in the US as well with Trump. But the future will be better, I'm sure. But these 2 coming years, we need to survive. And we make sure that we can survive, other people also survive, and thus we can create a very good future. The world will not be the way they want. They will be vanquished. And we want to honor Zé Cláudio and Maria. A lot of bravery, and please dare to continue creating a new world. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us. I think Easy has some information before we close.
Yes, wow. I don't really have the words to follow up to all of our wonderful speakers, but just thank you to everyone for being part of today's event. Thank you, Stefania and Bartira, and particularly to Felipe and Claudelice for contributing so movingly and insightfully, for sharing your commitment, analysis, and above all strength with us. It really feels a privilege to listen to you and to give a platform for your voices, to be inspired by your messages of courage, to feel the responsibility to react and to unite together in sharing this message and taking it forward to others. So thank you so much. I also really want to thank our wonderful interpreter, Christina. You've done an amazing job today with bringing all these different voices alive in different languages. So thank you. I thank again Latinamerikagruperna for your collaboration in bringing this event into being, and we look forward to collaborating more in future. And finally, thank you to our audience for your active listening and contributions and support of this discussion with your attendance and engagement. If you are interested in learning more, I can recommend the following books: Forces of Reproduction by Stefania, which was inspired by Maria and Zé Cláudio, and Environmental Defenders, which includes contributions by Claudelice and Felipe. And we'll post the resources linked to this event on our website and invite you to look there for more information. At Climate Change Leadership, we also have a few other events which touch on some of these themes later this spring. We're hosting a series of online conversations that look at the intersection between activists, artists, and researchers around some of these questions around the complexities of climate change and climate justice. And the next one will be happening on the 9th of June, and we invite you to join us there. Again, more information can be found on our website. There's been a lot of different thoughts and messages that have come up in today's discussion, and we're aware that to leave you at the end of your computers in such a moment can be a bit strange. So we've created another Zoom room, which you are very welcome to join following this webinar now. I believe Leila will be posting the link in the chat. So once you leave this webinar, if you would like to join us, please follow that link. And we'll just be having an informal discussion, maybe in some breakout rooms, depending on numbers, where we can share in our reflections together. So warmly welcome to that. But otherwise, we wish you well on this Thursday afternoon. And thank you again, everyone, so much. I leave you now with the faces of Maria and Zé Cláudio and the song Quebradeiras de Coco. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye for now.